All right, let's dive right in. Have you ever really stopped to think about what happens when technology isn't just something we use, but something we become? We're about to unpack a fascinating and, frankly, kind of terrifying monograph from the U.S. Army War College that explores exactly that. This is going to be a wild one. So let's just start with this. Picture your job right now. How do you compete with a colleague who, I don't know, never sleeps and processes data, say, 1,000 times faster than you can? I mean, how do you even begin to keep up when your competition isn't just smarter, but is operating on a totally different biological and computational level? That single question is pretty much the core of everything we're talking about today. Okay, so the source we're digging into today, a monograph by a Dr. Barton Clare, it gives us a name for this new kind of human. They're called Enhanced Singular Individuals, or ESIs for short. And look, this isn't some far-off science fiction fantasy. This is presented as a serious, strategic forecast of where humanity is headed next. So right away, you have to get all your pop culture ideas out of your head. We are not talking about Iron Man putting on a suit to go fight a bad guy. And ESI's enhancements are permanent. They're biologically integrated. It's part of who they are 24/7. It's a calm, synthetic, and total upgrade to their very being. It's not a tool. It's them. To really get a handle on this, the source breaks these new humans down into three, and you gotta love the names, three distinct categories. You've got the tweaked, the freaked, and the geeked. So let's break down what each of those really means. All right, here's the breakdown. First up, you have the tweaked. These are your mainstream ESIs. They look pretty much human, but on the inside, they're running on upgrades. Think nanobots, longevity formulas, that kind of thing. Then you have the freaked. These guys push the boundaries way, way further. We're talking cyborgs, clones, maybe even hive minds. And finally, there are the geeked. Now, these are basically unenhanced norms, like us, who get their edge from mastering external tech, like supercomputers or living in virtual worlds. And you might be thinking, okay, this is just for super secret military labs, right? Well, no. The monograph predicts that as the stuff gets easier and cheaper to make, these kinds of enhancements could become, well, as common as cosmetic surgery is today. And that is the moment everything changes for society. And this takes us right back to that first question about your colleague. If you can just buy better performance, what happens to the whole idea of fair competition? What does merit even mean anymore? As the source puts it, this just totally destroys the idea of a meritocracy that our entire professional world is supposedly built on. But the breakdown doesn't just stop with you and your coworker. Oh no, it goes way deeper. It attacks the very foundation of how we organize ourselves as a species, leadership. We're talking centuries of human hierarchies suddenly at risk of becoming completely obsolete. Now, to really get why this is such a big deal, you have to understand the old rulebook. The monograph lays out these 9 phases of leadership that have evolved throughout all of human history. You know, it starts with phase 1, that raw, instinctual leadership of our earliest ancestors. It moves through all the different bureaucratic and distributional phases, all the way to our modern phase 7 managerial systems. And what's the final phase? Phase 9? They call it the singularity. So let's see how this actually breaks the old models. Take phase 1, instinctual leadership. That's all about gut feelings, right? Fierce loyalty. But in a world with ESIs, a human's gut feeling is just, well, it's slow, messy data. It gets totally blown away by the cold, high-speed computational logic of an enhanced mind. Your intuition just can't compete. It's not even in the same league. And it totally shatters our modern managerial phase, too. I mean, our entire system is built on rewarding performance. But what happens when that performance is a direct result of a purchased upgrade? The source poses this perfect question. If I buy a better neural implant, should I get a bigger bonus? The whole structure of compensation, merit, promotions, it just completely falls apart. Okay, so this has all been a bit theoretical, right? To make this all feel completely real, the monograph walks us through this absolutely mind-bending hypothetical scenario. It takes us right from the theory and drops us into a story-driven example of what actually happens when ESIs join a traditional team. So the scene is a U.S. regional intelligence desk. The director, he's a highly trained norm, a regular human just like us. One day, he gets 3 new hires, and they're all ESIs. The effect is immediate. His existing expert staff instantly feel like, and this is a quote, evolutionary atavisms, which is a fancy way of saying they feel like they are throwbacks to an earlier, obsolete stage of evolution. Imagine being a Neanderthal watching a group of Homo sapiens invent fire. That's the feeling. So let's meet this new team. First up, you've got Sandra Beach. She's one of the tweaked.
She was bioengineered by her parents to have an IQ somewhere between 400 and 500. For her, intelligent stakeholders aren't just dots on a map, she literally perceives them as fluidic threads of energy. The way she sees her unenhanced colleagues, it's like how a chess grandmaster sees a high school chess club. They're not even playing the same game.
Okay, next up is Kevin Washington. Also tweaked, but he's all about nanotech. Get this, he inhales his upgrades once a year. These are nanocomputers that create a parallel processing network inside his mind. The nanobots constantly keep his brain perfectly oxygenated and flush out toxins. Oh, and they also allow him to basically read minds by translating the electrical patterns of people's thoughts. No big deal. And then there's Dorius. He's our freaked. His body is woven through with carbon nanotubes that emit musical algorithms, and these algorithms are based on cosmic phenomena, like the background radiation from the Big Bang. And listening to this cosmic music triggers these flashes of genius that are utterly incomprehensible to a normal human mind. I mean, wow. But just when you think it can't get any weirder, it turns out there's a fourth, hidden collaborator. A rogue ESI named Thal. She's a product of the criminal underworld. Her mother was implanted with animal genes by hackers. So Thal has this unbelievable mix of traits: the cold, calculating objectivity of a crocodile, the physical strength of a panther, and somehow the deep empathy of an elephant. What a combination. So what happens when this team gets to work? The result is a total and complete collapse of the leadership structure. The norm director's authority, his title, his years of experience, it all means absolutely nothing. He literally lacks the brain capacity to even understand what his team is doing, let alone lead them. Now I know this all sounds pretty bleak for us norms, right? But the source actually does offer a kind of silver lining, a potential way forward for unenhanced human leaders. It explores what it calls the last stand, if you will, of the norm leader. And that path forward, it's all about doubling down on the things that make us uniquely human. The skills that are going to matter in this new world aren't processing power. They're things like empathy, humility, sense of humor, and that hard-to-define ability to build real, collaborative emotional bonds. These are the things that pure, cold computational logic might never be able to replicate. So the role of the norm leader totally shifts. It becomes one of translation. An ESI, for all its brilliance, might not have the psychological nuance to convince a terrified workforce to get on board with some radical new strategy. The norm leader becomes that essential bridge, the emotional translator between the superintelligent and the rest of us. But as we push this whole idea to its logical conclusion, a final massive question emerges. Because what happens when our very consciousness stops being a singular thing and becomes more like networked software, something that can be backed up, shared, and even edited? Just think about that for a second. When a crime is committed by a collective mind, who do you put on trial? I mean, if an ESI's mind is a fusion of millions of other minds and AI programs, and that ESI does something wrong, who's held accountable? The person whose body it is? The software developers? The network itself? It's a question that completely breaks our existing legal and moral frameworks, and it's something we really need to start thinking about now.